and welcome to Taya Mini Reads, Reviews, Discusses, Monologues about everything and anything, and that's on period. Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. So I wanted to do a book series. We could do like an author deep dive. Like I have done these. I did one for Brandon Sanderson, and I also have one that should be coming out pretty shortly for Robin Hobb. So since I read 6 books from this one author, I decided, you know what? Let me just do a video talking about this author, and that will be Julia Quinn, who wrote the Bridgerton stories. So I'm going to also kind of break down, the book versus the TV show. So let's get started. So let's kind of talk about the first book. So I read books 1 to 6, and it's a mouthful, so I'm just gonna get it over with. The first one is The Duke and I. The second one is going to be what was the second one? Okay, give me a second. I swear I thought I had this. Okay, so book 1 is The Duke and I. Book 2 is The Viscount Who Loved Me. Book 3 is An Offer from a Gentleman. Book 4 is Romancing Mister Bridgerton. Okay, I'm doing good. Book 5 is To Sir Phillip with Love. And book 6 is When He Was Wicked. So let's start again. Book 1 is Daphne and Simon's story, who's the Duke. Book 2 is Anthony and Kate, who Anthony's the Viscount. Book 3 is Benedict and Sophie, who Sophie's the maid. Book 4 is Colin and Penelope, who Penelope is Lady Whistledown. Spoilers. And book 5 is Eloise and Sir Phillip Crane, who is the husband of Marina, if you remember who she is. And then book 6 is Francesca and John and Michael's story. Yeah. Okay, so let's get started with the first book. Now, I haven't rewatched Bridgerton in a minute, so I'm not so fresh on the show, but I'm very caught up with the book, and I do remember some bits of the show. So bear with me as I kind of muddle through my thoughts on this. The book, again, and I'll just answer the question if anyone had the question. If you feel like I've watched the shows and I don't really necessarily think the books will add anything, I think you should think again, because I read the books, obviously, after the show, and I loved it. And I don't think I would have done it any other way. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I feel like me watching the show first and me reading the book second enriched my perception of the show. Like, I appreciate the show so much. Like, Shonda Rhimes, oh my God, she blew it out the park. I'm telling you, like, the detail that went into the show, that's something that you just have to be creative. You just have to know how to set the scene. Like, it's done. Mwah. Chef's kiss. She deserves a standing ovation for how she brought Bridgerton to life. Because, to be honest, Bridgerton by itself, like the books, are good. There's nothing wrong with them. They're actually pretty good. But with the music score, the filming, the direction, like, it's just times 1 million magnified so much better. I'm telling you. So I really, really, really enjoyed the show, but then I really enjoyed the books, and it's just there was nothing that spoiled the experience either ways, like show or book. It was just so good. So first book is The Duke and I. So we follow Daphne and Simon. Now, I appreciated the book because the book gave us a lot more background on Simon and why Simon was the way he was in the show. And that's the thing, like, words can really convey, or describe feelings and reasonings. The show can only do so much because the show is doing it with glances, with, facial expression, with physical expression, with, trying to convey, but it's hard, right? And I'm not like the the actors, they did phenomenal, right? But I think now, having read book one, I really understand Simon at his foundation, and it makes sense why he was so hell bent on not wanting to have a child with Daphne. So I think the book, honestly, I think you should just read the book and watch the show. That's the best way, honestly, because, well, actually, watch the show and read the book. Either ways, anyone works. But I think they go hand in hand because the book gives you so much background that, yes, is in the show, but it's not so explicitly explained, right? So you miss certain reasons why people are behaving the way they're behaving, at least in this scenario. And yeah, so I thought it was really brilliant, right? Book one was fantastic. It was 10 over 10 for me. I loved the series, and I loved the book. Book two. So in book two, we are in Anthony and Kate's story. Now, the way they did it in the show, it kind of felt like Anthony was cheating on Kate's sister because he was kind of like betrothed to her in the show. In the book, it didn't even get to that point because everyone around them could see that they were so into each other. So I preferred the way the book wrote it because it was so much better than making them out to be like a bunch of cheaters, which is one reason why I did not really like that season. Because I just felt like, oh my God, like, can you just come out with it and just be together instead of snooping around your sister? I just didn't like the way the show did it, but I enjoyed the book because the book was more straightforward in that, they couldn't keep it together, and the sister note, it didn't even get to the point where the sister, there was talk of, oh, he wanted to date her sister, but it never went anywhere because it was just him and Kate from the get. So I really enjoyed that. Another thing that I do want to appreciate is that certain details in the books, the main themes, like main reason, the main propelling force of each book or each character's, you know, trajectory was pretty much the same in the show. So like in book one, Simon is a bit hesitant about having kids, and that's exactly what happens in the show. In book two, you see Anthony struggling to be a good duke, a good person, a father, a brother, and not trying and to be a gentleman, right? Because he's like, I would not, I would not, he's like, I'm not gonna fall to temptation, but he's so in love or so drawn to Kate, and that's basically the same thing. It's like a enemies to lovers for their story. Now, this is a flip. In the show, we get Colin and Penelope's story first, but in the books, we get Benedict and Sophie's story first. So I will talk about that first. Now, we get Benedict and Sophie's story. It happens exactly like the show, part one. There's a ball. He meets Sophie. He doesn't know her name. He's looking for her. All of that is good. A couple of things are a bit accelerated in the book versus the show. The offer from a gentleman, yeah, it was really an offer with the "Be My Mistress" thing. He said the exact same thing in the book, so there's no surprise there. But he actually pestered her. I don't know if that we're gonna get that in part two, but he pestered her a lot into, being his mistress in the books, which was a little annoying. And then again, we haven't seen this story, so I don't really want to speculate, but I think they're gonna with keep with the same vein. Book three is supposed to be like a Cinderella kind of story, so there's no surprise there, right? Obviously, her dad left her money, and Araminta is just like an evil stepmother. So, I mean, it's pretty basic, but I would say that what really made me read this books, because this is the first time I'm reading Bridgerton, and the shows came out like 2-3 years ago. But it's because Benedict and Sophie's acting, Yerin did such a good job. She looks so pitiful, but you could see her brimming with desire for Mr. Bridgerton. And I think they brought the characters to life, honestly. It's so done so well, right? One thing I will say is, and this is for all the books, In the books, there's no people of color or ethnicity or anything. The characters are basically white. So I think it was also good that, Shonda changed things up a bit to introduce characters, of a different color. And to be quite honest, I don't really see anyone as other than the characters. For example, one character that's mentioned throughout each and every of the characters' books is Anthony. And every time I was reading, a specific book, I honestly was thinking, oh, Jonathan Bailey. Like I would see Anthony and I would envision Jonathan Bailey and be like, oh yeah. Like, so I feel like the characters were enriched for being people of color. I'm not saying Jonathan is I mean, maybe he is, I don't know. But what I'm saying is, I think each and every character embodied the role despite the ethnicity or, whatever the original books had, right? I think they really embodied the role. Like Simon, I don't see any other person that could be Simon. Like he was that good, right? And so, yeah. Benedict and Sophie's story was actually kind of like one of my fave. I really enjoyed them in the books. It was cute. Like again, it's a Cinderella story, so it's like no surprise there, basically. And after that, I then read Romance in Mr. Bridgerton, which is Colin and Penelope. This was my least favorite. I don't know, like I think it has something to do with Colin. Colin in the books is supposedly reserved but smart. He's supposedly observant and very he kind of like he's like I got my eyes on you, right? So he's very coded. He's not like Anthony, which Anthony is like a hothead. Colin is the more calm one, but like I can kill you now, calm, if you do anything to my sister, kind of person. Benedict is just like Gabe. He just goes where Anthony goes. So I really enjoyed book Colin. I did not really like show Colin. And so when I read the book, it was such a surprise because I was like, damn, like this is the only one I think maybe is a bit the character and the book character is just not doing it for me. Everyone else, yes. But Colin, I don't know who else I would picture as Colin. It might just be that actor's thing is just not pulling off Colin. But Colin in the books, ooh, Colin in the books is good, especially when we get to Francesca's story. Colin is one of the main propellants in that, well, part of, and the way he does it, I'm looking to see how this our current Colin that we have in the show is going to pull that off, basically. But to Colin and Penelope's story, I enjoyed the book more than I enjoyed the show. It was the same plot lines, discovering that she's laid a whistle down, and also her friendship with Eloise. I mean, it was basically they kept to the same. So it wasn't anything different, but I don't necessarily like their love story. I don't know, like it just, and in the book, it wasn't like anything happened. Like he just one day just like, oh, Penelope's sort of attractive. I swear it literally happened like that. So I think maybe that's one of the things that's kind of put me off because I'm like, it wasn't like you've seen Penelope your whole life, but one day you just had one intelligent conversation and I guess proximity because he was always hanging out with Penelope and then he's just like, oh yeah, ooh, she's hot. Like, ooh. I was like, come off it. Whereas Anthony and Kate was an instant like dislike. Benedict and Sophie was love at first sight. Daphne and Simon were friends, kind of, but I think he was kind of attracted to her from the get. So I think pulling off friends to lovers is a bit hard because it's like one day you see the person one lens and the next day it's like, boom, it's like, oh my God, so yeah, no, it wasn't for me. So the next one would be to Sir Phillip with love. This is Eloise's story. First of all, Eloise's character in the show and Eloise in the book, snap, 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 snap. They nailed it. Like Eloise in the book is so annoying. She talks a mile a minute and she's just like, da, 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 da. She yaps a whole lot. So they kept true to that. Eloise is feeling a little lost and anchored after Colin and Penelope get married, which they are trying to show in the show, where you can see she kind of formed this pact with Benedict, like, okay, I don't have anyone. Colin and Pauline are like, Colin and Penelope are together. And we know she was super close with Penelope. So when you get to, Eloise's book, it's directly after the events of Colin and Penelope getting married. Whereas in the show, it's more, some time has passed, so you don't really see the conflict. But there is conflict in that she really thought that she and Penelope were going to grow old together. They were going to be spinsters on the block. And so she's feeling a little unmoored. She's a bit jealous, which is normal. She's a little, sad that she's lost her best friend and her best bro, and just technically feels like she's lost her chance. So she had been writing to Sir Phillip for a whole year, because this is where Marina comes in. I don't know if you remember Marina from the show. She used to be kind of hitched with Colin. Again, I don't remember, I think. Or she was set to marry Colin, something of that sort. Anyways, Marina actually marries Sir Phillip. And Marina is the Bridgerton's cousin, whereas I think in the show, she's a Featherington cousin. I'm not really sure. Again, don't quote me on that. I need to go rewatch the show again. But from a book perspective, she's Eloise and the Bridgertons, all of them's cousin. And so she marries Sir Philip. She dies tragically. And Sir Philip sets up a correspondence with Eloise where they're exchanging letters for a whole year. And he has 2 kids from Marina, well, twins. And so he kind of makes a suggestion like, hey, I think we should get married. What do you think? Do you want to come and visit me? And Eloise, as you know her from the show, she's impatient and she doesn't really think ahead. So she elopes to Sir Philip's house. And that's basically the plot of that whole story. I think the story was done well. The book was done really well. It just wasn't my fave, and not for anything. I just felt like Sir Philip had some misguided conceptions of himself and of family, and you could tell the conflict was huge in the book. Another thing is, and I would say this for all of the books that I read, is the way the characters, go through conflict is so weird. Like, they would just be like thinking, oh my God, why did I behave like this? Why am I doing like this? Next thing is like, oh, I know why. It's because I love this person. Please. The way they always got to that realization was so funny. Like, they would have had this whole thing that was a conflict in their mind as to why they couldn't be with so-and-so person. And then it would just take them 5 minutes and they're like, oh my God, I suddenly realized that I love this person. I'm like, please. So I think that in Sir Philip, that's what made me Sir Philip was just not my fave, because Sir Philip, well, I mean, I could see where his turning point was, but before then, he was just so set. Like, he just wanted a mother to his kids and not necessarily a wife. But he wanted a wife who would satisfy him in bed. So it was like, come off it, dude. Like, it just didn't make sense. But I'm excited to see how Eloise's story is going to play out in the show. Because this one, it takes place outside London, so just be prepared for that. We're not going to have any balls and stuff like that. So it makes sense that they are intermeshing the characters' stories, because if we were to get the shows the way they wrote the books, it wouldn't really make sense. And the timeline is all messed up in the books. I don't know how the author did it, but everything kind of happens so weirdly, which it's difficult because you're writing about siblings. So, I think she did the best she could. Now, the last will be Francesca's story, which this one, my personal favorite. This one, 10 over 10. If I were to rank the books, it would be When He Was Wicked, The Duke and I, To Sir Phillip with Love, The Viscount Who Loved Me, and Oh, wait, I left Benedict and Sophie. Okay, let's do it again. It would be When He Was Wicked, The Duke and I, An Offer from a Gentleman, To Sir Philip with Love, The Viscount Who Loved Me, and Romance in Mr. Bridgerton. So I especially liked Francesca's story because, how do I put it? Francesca's story was it was like the person you marry versus marrying your soulmate. So she loved John. Like no one could fault her and say she did not love John. But I don't necessarily think that John was her soulmate. And the show brought that to life so well. You could tell that it wasn't a love match. It was just someone she grew to love, but there were no sparks. And something that happened in season 4, part 1 is she's going around trying to figure out what a pinnacle is. Don't ask. Don't like I'm just gonna say it. If you know what a pinnacle is, maybe someone ought to tell Francesca because homegirl is looking for her pinnacle and she can't find it. So I really like how, the show brought Francesca and John's story to life. In the books, we don't really get a lot of her relationship with John or their marriage. We just literally get like one little chapter of them together and then he just like dies. So I appreciate seeing this piece where you can immediately tell that she settled, but she loved John. Whereas Michael, who's John's cousin, oh my God, it was the best story ever. It was the best story ever. I'm telling you. Michael loved her like, for him, it was love at first sight. For her, not so much, right? Because she obviously settled. And then you could tell the progression because she actually liked Michael. It wasn't just like this is my husband's cousin, I have to be respectful to him. No, they actually had a close relationship. Nothing, untoward, but she genuinely liked Michael as a person. So it was so much better. I wouldn't say when John died, but when John died and they kind of got together, or the stages of them getting together, it was peak. It was so peak. It was so, 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 so good. Like I really enjoyed that story just because it was like a second chance. Like you didn't, and in the show, you see Francesca talking to her mom, trying to figure out like, how do I know I will meet a love match, or how do I know this person would be my soulmate? That's something that she could never figure out. So it ties so well into the book. And yeah, she gets with Michael and that's good. But the show, they then went a whole different direction and made Michael into a Michaela. Come on. Again, I'm okay with them bringing inclusion into the shows and everything, but it's just like the main theme in this story is going to be hard because the title, because John was Earl of Kilmartin, if he dies, that title is going to go to the next available male family member, which we don't have that because Michael is now a Michaela. How's that going to happen? So that means title will probably go to someone else. Well, not their family, and it's going to leave their family and go to a different family because they don't have a male person. The only other way would be that Francesca would be pregnant after John dies and she would have a son. But that would not be true to the story because in the story, in the actual book, Francesca suffered with infertility for a very long time, which was also another reason why her story was so good, because the other people kind of felt frivolous, more like, something that had to do with you coming to terms with something like a status or a society or this is, who I am, expectation. They were trying to figure who they were, before they could realize that this is the person I want to be with. Whereas in Francesca's story, she was battling with something that was entirely out of her hand. There's nothing she could have done. This is 1808, no doctors, no experienced doctors, no fertility, anything. So if you didn't have kids, you didn't have kids. That was it, right? And it was, again, countermanded by her siblings that were breeding like pigs, if I could say that. So, she was, I think she was going through a lot, right? She faced the death of a spouse so early, right? She was only with John for 2 years before John died. And then she couldn't have kids for 2 years. She was with John. And then even when she got with Michael, she couldn't also have kids for an extended period of time. So I think that Francesca's story was more rich and more like real issues that people go through versus a will they, won't they? Or like a Colin, I don't know why I keep calling him Colin, which is their name. But like Penelope and Colin, where it was simply Colin was just upset that she was Lisa Whistledown and was like, oh my God, how could you bring so much shame? Blah, 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 blah. And in the books, Penelope wasn't as scathing as she was in the show to the Bridgerton family, which that kind of was swept under the rug. They kind of just accepted that she was Lady Whistledown, which didn't make too much sense to me. But in the book, she was much nicer, and so they accepted her. But anyway, I digress. So, anyways, I really like Francesca's story because, there were a lot of things a lot of things that were explored there, right? So I'm a little stymied as to how the show is going to pull it off. That's all. Like I said, she could get pregnant and John dies and she has a child, thereby keeping the Kilmartin title, right, in their family, but it takes away from her story, which was the infertility part. So I don't know. I really don't know because the title is definitely not going to go to Michaela, except that's also another route they could go is try to make Michaela become the new Earl of Kilmartin, which for the times, I just don't see how that's going to happen because even the way they wrote Benedict and Sophie's story, it was hard to make Sophie kind of come off as respectable, but they still couldn't. And they couldn't even necessarily live in London. They actually had to live in the country because Sophie was a maid. So it was hard in that time period for a maid, even though she was like a illegitimate daughter, but it was kind of hard for her to, like, Benedict couldn't elevate her status. Like, she was always going to be an illegitimate daughter. Like, if Benedict was the Viscount, it probably would have been a different story, but he wasn't. He was just a Mister Bridgerton. So no titles, no, he's not knighted, he's nothing. So yeah, he and Sophie couldn't beat, society's expectations. So that's why I just wonder how they're going to go with Francesca and Michaela's story. It'll be interesting. I don't think it will be something that will satisfy me because I really like the book. I wish they stayed with the book because that story was much more interesting. Well, it was much more interesting than just, trying to, I don't know, change it up, basically. So we'll see. I don't know, but I definitely wish that they stuck to Francesca's story because her main point was one, dealing with the loss of a spouse, two, dealing with infertility, where like we can tally it, right? The first book is Daphne she was too friendly and so she couldn't make a match, and that was really one of her biggest issues, whereas Simon had some issues from so it's mostly people coming to terms with things that's happened to them and being okay with it, which is in their control. How do you deal with stuff that's not in your control, like your spouse dying? I don't think any of the other siblings ever dealt with something as heavy as what Francesca did. And that's why I'm a little upset that her story was changed, because most of the things that happened to them, they just had to think about it. And like I said, they just one day make a decision, be like, oh, I choose love, blah, blah, blah. But Francesca couldn't. Even if she's like, oh, I love John, John was dead, right? But again, it served to show that she didn't have a love match, but again, she was able to find her soulmate after her husband died. So that is my very, 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 very long-winded discussion about the Bridgerton shows and the Bridgerton books. Now, which one do I like better? I would think I like them both. I don't think anyone goes without the other. I like the show for the music, the scenery, everything being brought to life. Oh, I do have to mention in the show, we do have Lady Danbury, which we have Lady Danbury in the books. We don't have the Mundriches. We don't have the Queen. I know, shock. And we don't have a couple of other characters. So, oh yeah, like the Featherington family, they had one more sister called Felicity who was friends with Hyacinth. So we don't have that in the show. I don't know why they took that out. And we didn't even get anything about the Featherington's story, like their dad. That's just something the show kind of built out. Same with Lady Danbury's story, except maybe we never got Lady Danbury's story, at least in the books 1 to 6 that I read. So that's also something the show built out. Obviously, Queen Charlotte was not in the show at all, and not in the books at all. That's just something that got built out in the show. But I think they were all good additions and make the story even more richer. So, I would say I love the two of them. I love the books because the books go into so much detail. But I like the show because the show gives you a very, very good representation of the characters that you're reading in the books, except maybe Colin. Except maybe even Lady Danbury's done really. She's exactly who you think she will be, right? We don't even have Lady Danbury's brother who's, going all up on Mama Bridgerton. We don't have that. But yeah, I think, they had an opportunity to do something great with the show and they took it and it paid off magnificently. Like, I definitely enjoyed the shows, even so much so after reading the book. So I can't really say which is better. I can say story by story. But yeah. So that's my very long-winded Bridgerton discussion. I would definitely pick up Hyacinth and Gregory's story later on. I did not because I feel like I don't really know them. I haven't connected with them enough because they're so much younger in the shows as of now. So I probably will pick it up later, or I might pick it up, tomorrow, who knows? But again, we're not even getting their stories anytime soon. So I'm not really in a rush because I would want to read it, around the show or after the show because it was just so much better doing it that way. But yes, I just read books 1 to 6, but it was really great. I love the show. I definitely recommend. Let me know if you read Bridgerton, if you've watched the shows. Which one did you like the most? I can't say. I think I love the two of them. Barring some caveats like book 2 and Francesca's story. Those two, not my fave, but everything else kind of good. And the music, so good. So good. I love the classical music, but with a twist. Like, everything is just so good. Even in Sophie's story, I'm sorry, I'm just remembering stuff from when I read the book, but in Sophie's story in the show where we get, life as a housemaid, we don't get that in the books. And so I really enjoy, that, other perspective. Like, it's so good. I'm like, ooh, the footman, what's his name? Is it John? I don't remember his name, but the footman in Sophie's story, he's so funny and he's cute. And it's so good. It's so good. So yeah, thank you for listening to me yap. Let me know your thoughts about the Bridgerton show, the Bridgerton books, the characters, expectations for Eloise and Francesca's stories going forward. But yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Until then, bye.